Imagine this, you're homeless, and out of the blue, you inherit a camper. But there's a catch. Life, as we all know, is full of unexpected turns. But when I found myself the unexpected recipient of a camper, it was far from the windfall it initially seemed. This wasn't just any camper, you see, it was more like a scene from a horror movie. A relative of mine had met a grisly end inside it, and as the next of kin I was suddenly saddled with the responsibility of, well, cleaning up the aftermath. Now I'm no stranger to hardship. At the time I was homeless. But even for me the prospect of dealing with this camper was daunting. It wasn't just the physical mess that made my stomach churn. It was the fact that the mess was, well, it was my own relative, and it had been sitting there, closed up for weeks. I didn't even want to think about it, let alone deal with it. I tried to do the right thing. I made calls to remediation services only to find out that the costs were sky high, and there seemed to be no assistance available for someone in my position. I felt stuck, trapped in a situation that was as grim as it was bizarre. And then there were the legal issues. I was told that I couldn't legally sell the camper until it was cleaned up. But I had my doubts about whether that was true. I mean, who would want to buy such a thing in the first place? As the weeks turned into a month with no progress in sight, I was starting to lose hope. But then a friend of mine suggested something. An idea that at first seemed too crazy to be true. Could it really work? Could I really get rid of this camper, and perhaps even turn my own situation around in the process? And then a friend suggested an idea that seemed a bit too crazy to be true. Selling a biohazardous camper on Facebook Marketplace, it sounds insane, right? But that's precisely what happened. My friend, who had been my rock throughout this ordeal, suggested the idea. At first, I laughed it off. I mean, who in their right mind would pay $1,000 for a camper coated in organic matter? But the more I thought about it, the more I felt I had nothing to lose. So, one day, I found myself crafting a description for the camper. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I detailed every gritty, gruesome aspect of it. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I explained the situation, how my relative had met their end in the camper, how it was left untouched for weeks, and how it was now my burden to bear. I even uploaded photos of the interior revealing the grim reality of the camper. It was a sight that could easily make one's stomach churn, and I was surprised that Facebook didn't take it down. But there it was, live for anyone to see and possibly to purchase. I remember hitting post and feeling a strange mix of relief and apprehension. I had exposed myself, my situation to the world, and now all I could do was wait. Wait to see if anyone was brave or desperate enough to take on this challenge. The camper sat there on the marketplace, a digital stain amidst the sea of regular items. I wondered if anyone would even click on it, let alone consider buying it. Every time I got a notification, my heart would pound, only to be met with disappointment when it wasn't about the camper. Days turned into weeks, and the camper remained unsold. The reality of my situation began to sink in. Was it too much to ask? Was I destined to be stuck with this biohazardous camper forever? But then, out of the blue, something unexpected happened. A message pinged in my inbox. It was an inquiry about the camper, and not just from anyone, but from a pregnant couple. And then, unexpectedly, a pregnant couple showed up. It was hard to believe someone would want to buy this camper, let alone a pregnant woman and her boyfriend. Yet, here they were, standing in front of the biohazardous camper, with an inexplicable spark in their eyes. An enthusiasm that was almost infectious, if not for the grim reality of what they were looking at. Their faces didn't betray an ounce of disgust or fear. Instead, they were filled with a sense of purpose, a determination that seemed to say, "We can handle this." They walked around inspecting the camper, discussing amongst themselves. They were not afraid of some deep cleaning, they said. They were ready to roll up their sleeves and scrub away the grime and gore, to transform this camper into a home for their growing family. I watched them in disbelief, a lump growing in my throat. This was not what I had expected. When I had listed the camper on Facebook Marketplace, I had thought no one in their right mind would want it. Yet, here was a couple, ready to pay almost $1,000 for it. They negotiated the price, haggling down to $850. Still a crazy amount for what they were getting, I thought. The shock of selling the camper was overwhelming. The camper, which had been a burden, a reminder of my relative's gruesome death, was suddenly a source of income. An income that could change my life, get me off the streets, into a house. But with that relief, came a wave of guilt. I was selling a biohazardous camper to a pregnant woman and her boyfriend. I was putting their lives, their unborn child's life at risk, all for my own personal gain. It was a heavy realization, one that weighed on my conscience. With the sale complete, I suddenly had the means to change my life. But at what cost? Was it worth it? That's a question I still grapple with, years later. From a biohazardous camper to a new home, life had taken a surprising turn. The camper that was a grim reminder of my relative's untimely demise, the camper that was an embodiment of my desperation, had become my ticket to a new beginning. With the $950 I got from the sale, I managed to secure a roof over my head. It's the same house I am living in now, years after the incident. But with every passing day, the guilt of my actions gnawed at me. I had sold a biohazardous camper, a potential health hazard, to a pregnant woman and her partner. They had been so eager, so hopeful, and I had let them walk away with a camper that had witnessed a gruesome death. I had potentially put their lives and that of their unborn child at risk. How could I have let my desperation override my moral compass? How could I have allowed myself to be swayed by the temptation of quick money? The questions gnawed at me, day in and day out, adding to the weight of my guilt. I needed to confess, to lighten this burden that was crushing me. So I turned to the one place where I could spill my secrets without revealing my identity: the internet. With every word I typed, I felt a fraction of the guilt lift from my shoulders. But it wasn't enough. I needed to do more, to make amends in some way. So I started volunteering at local community centers, helping those less fortunate find housing. I hoped that by helping others I could somehow make up for my past mistakes. It was a small step, but it was a start. So here it is, my confession, a burden lifted, yet still weighing heavy on my conscience. I sold a biohazardous camper to a pregnant couple, potentially putting their lives at risk, all for my personal gain. It's a mistake I deeply regret, and one I hope to rectify through my actions in the future.